Hello, we are live. The DNVR, the Denver Sports Podcast. Yes. Andre, stop laughing at me. I know it's Friday. We're going to have some fun, but you need to stop giggling all over the place.
Nice shirt, Andre. I like that.
Thanks, buddy. I'm thrilled. I wanted you all to know that I was thrilled to be here.
I'm off the shirt. I take the compliment back already.
Vogt just wanted everyone to acknowledge his flamingo shirt that he's going on this casual Friday.
Nice. That's true. I just started the shirt train. So it would come back to me eventually.
Go retweet it. Let's not forget to do that, even though we are not in person. Soon, guys. I'm thinking soon.
Vogt, not as original as you thought.
Oh.
Damn it. Well, you know what? Flyby Cygnus is pretty cool, though, so I'm with it. That person whips ass at WGT golf.
Yes, he does.
Oh yeah, didn't they win last week?
He's really good at real golf too, apparently.
That makes well, that's less compelling to me.
Well, thanks, guys. Guys, I have a homework assignment for every single person listening right now, except the people who've already downloaded it. But if
this is going to be on the quiz,
go download the WGT Golf app and join the DNVR Clubhouse. It's so much fun. We actually had to open DNVR Clubhouse 2.0 because of the response we got. So if you're interested, don't forget to look up DNVR 2, and that second Clubhouse will show up. And we have a tournament going on this weekend, right, Vogt?
We do. It's our first major. Stall for me for 2 seconds.
Okay. We have a tournament going on this weekend. Hop on so you can win prizes and beat people like Vogt.
The DNVR Open. It's our first major. It's a very big deal, very prestigious.
Really easy. You should have told that one. That was going to be like just something elaborate.
I got 1.5 feet in Saturday already. I'm gonna keep it.
All right. Once again, don't forget to go to dnvrgolf.com and download the WGT app. It's actually a lot of fun, and you will be addicted. And I am sorry, but you will get addicted to that game, and it may frustrate you, and it might make you happy. It frustrates me.
I can confirm. All right. Besides Cygnus and one other guy, I came in third in the last tournament. So.
Oh, there you go.
On the Knucklehead Invitational.
Yeah, the super hard one. Yeah.
He tried to name drop since he knew that one.
That one I knew.
Oh, the Knucklehead Invitational. Yeah, I got
You were supposed to quit the Knuckle. We designed that course so that the winner would be whoever made it through.
I came in third with a 58, to be clear.
It's so dumb. This should be a lot more fun this week.
All right, well, welcome into the Denver Sports Podcast. I am your host, Allie Monroy, and today I've got Brendan Vogt, Andre Simone, Drew Creasman, and Rudo on the show. Show me your Breck Brews.
Oh, I have a coffee.
You said you're 2 feet into Saturday and you're not drinking a Breck Brew?
Yeah.
I'm turning a new leaf,
Oh,
guys.
You said 1 foot.
I'm
trying to go 3 days without consuming Breck beer.
I'm going to the bar tonight.
So. Yep.
Yeah. So am I, so that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
You will be drinking pictures of Breck Brew.
Can't wait.
Can I sleep at the bar tonight? Because I'm barely functioning as is, so we're going to see how that works.
So you need some Strava Craft coffee, like Vogt was drinking.
Knucklehead has a cot in the back, and I'm pretty sure it's
perfect.
Open. So.
Yeah,
okay,
right next to the bathroom, I'm sure.
Yeah.
If you can withstand the takes, you can sleep there.
All right, guys. You all already know this, but Breck Brew is the official beer of DNVR, and we obviously love it as we will be consuming pitchers of it at the DNVR bar tonight. Don't forget to pick up a 15-can pack of Mile High Copper Lager, or I know the DNVR Nuggets guys call it the Joker pack.
The Jokic pack, yeah.
The Jokic.
Because he has so many abs now, and 15 is a natural number for
There
abs.
you go. You can pick some up at Davidson's or any grocery store and even Costco. So start your Friday off right with us and drink some Breck Brews. All right, guys. Another DNVR Draft Day live in the books. We will be talking about the MLB Draft, but also all drafts in general, deciding which sport has the most difficult draft and more. But first, Drew here and Patrick Lyons did a fantastic job on that MLB coverage of the draft. You guys actually made it fun, and I actually enjoyed watching an MLB draft. So thank you.
Thank you. I also thought it was fun. I'm mostly dead now after we were live on the air for about 7.5 hours over 2 days. But actually, no, it was a whole lot of fun. We had literally 25 guests on. Okay, look, can I pull back the curtain on that just a little bit? It's one of those things, when you like reach out to like 25 people.
You think
For a
only
party?
15 are going to
For a party, you're like, oh, over invite.
Yeah,
Everyone shows up.
Half aren't going to be able to make it. They've got previous engagements. You assume a couple flake on you. Some just, don't want to bother. Literally, everyone was like, it's baseball. We haven't had any in 9 months. We'd love to come on your show. So we had like 5 players, the head of player development, every single reporter that covers the Rockies, I think. It was an absolute blast.
Oh, Rudo and I were backstage producing, and at one point there was 4 guests backstage, and we were like, "Oh God!"
Yeah, I learned how to juggle at a very young age, and this felt a lot more difficult than that. So,
the coolest part, where fans were really hyped on the Rockies' 9th overall pick.
yeah,
Zach Veen.
let's go.
Vaccine.
Zach.
Yeah.
Okay, I said it right.
Is he the vaccine to the Rockies' woes?
Oh,
Is
God.
that?
I believe that may be in the
I
works.
didn't like it. I don't like it.
Yeah,
The comment section was going crazy. People were comparing, saying like him dropping to 9 was like Judy falling, even MPJ. People were having a good time with it. Drew, let's start with you. What are your thoughts on the Rockies draft and Veen?
Yeah, it was pretty amazing that happened. I hadn't done too much research on Veen other than checking the top line stuff. The profile was there and obvious. We thought he was going 4 or 5 in the draft. When he was still on the board there at 9, we were stunned. And then when the Rockies took him, it was obvious. This is a guy who's drawn comparisons to Cody Bellinger. People started dropping Christian Yelich and Larry Walker comps on him right away.
Larry Walker's like maybe the worst offensive player in that trio.
Right. And it's just like, it's amazing what people, we had the high A hitting coach on day 2. And the second we mentioned Zach Veen's name and asked him to talk about his swing, this giant smile just came over his face. He was beside himself. He was like, this kid, I mean, all of the tools are there for him to be the next really big thing, and we had kind of resigned ourselves to the Rockies making a safe pick.
Yeah.
Doing something smart and safe that we all would have been like, yeah, no, this is good. We'd have gone to the fan base and been like, look, guys, this is why this is a good thing. And then this happened, and you don't have to explain it. We started rolling film, and everyone in the comment section was like, oh, he gonna hit 40 bombs at Coors Field.
You also had people like, oh man, gotta give Brenich some credit.
Yeah.
Fans were even feeling that good.
So what's the to pour a glass of cold water on it, Drew? Now that we're getting hyped. So
Thanks.
it's
folks.
clearly an exciting pick at 9, and like being well versed in the NBA, I understand how someone so talented like MPJ could slide to 14. The value there. If Zach Veen is everything we're hearing, why 9 instead of 1, or closer to 1? And what's, you said it's a riskier pick as opposed to a safe pick. Where is that risk represented as far as the baseball draft?
Right. So the big thing in baseball is this usually pretty large difference between your high school guys and your college guys. Your high school guys just tend to be more raw. There's not as much of a track record there. They probably haven't literally even like filled out their physical bodies to a point where we know who they're going to be as athletes. And so that's where a lot of the question marks come. Zach Veen is 6'5", 200 pounds. So that is a frame that should build out as he becomes a 20 and 21 year old.
He's 18 still?
Yeah, he is 18
Sure, he doesn't want to play football.
In Florida too.
Yeah, he's a big, strong kid with a smooth swing, and then the other thing is just high school guys. They take a long time to get to the bigs. Trevor Story took almost 6 years out of high school to get to the bigs. Some of these other guys, David Dahl, also had injuries along the way, but it took him a minute. Sickness.
I feel that comment in my soul.
Yeah, same, dude.
33 here and still waiting. So we're with you, brother.
Filling out our frames here, but
Yeah.
A couple more inches are coming for me, though. My mom told me I should.
Oh, I'm filling out,
first.
just in
Yeah.
the wrong spots here. Don't
Yeah.
worry about that.
Yeah.
I feel that, Rudo. I feel that.
But yeah, I mean, so that's kind of one of the things where you're like, well, he's got a chance to be great. There's potential MVP, and that's intriguing. But you got to wait maybe 5 years.
Okay.
Where these other guys are like, well, they might not be MVPs, but they might help us win a championship next season.
Right.
There's just that big gap there. Veen's not going to be at Coors Field anytime soon, but I'll tell you what, he's going to make it there, and it's going to be really fun to watch him hit.
It's a matter of when, not if.
I think so.
Drew, you guys talked about it a little bit on DNVR Draft Day Live, but last year the Rockies chose a lot of guys that were already in college, and this year it was the opposite. A lot of high school guys. I think just one or two guys in college. Why do you think that is?
I think it was two players fell to them that they did not expect to be on the board. I think they were ready to take a college pitcher with that number 9 overall pick, and that's part of the reason why you do have to give Jeff Bridich and company credit. They had 4 or 5 minutes to make this decision, thinking there was a 10% chance this guy was going to be available. And it was, look, do we want to go with this guy that maybe we've scouted a bit more, that addresses a more specific need, that our fans are going to understand why we took a pitcher, because we always need pitching, because can't get free agent pitchers to sign here? Or do we take this kid who might be a franchise superstar caliber guy? And, if we look back on it and we didn't take this kid, we're going to feel stupid. And they had 4 minutes to decide that.
I need about 3 seconds to make that decision. I don't think it's that hard, but
it's I'm with you. As soon as I realized Veen was there, and I didn't know their second pick, the 35th overall, very well, because the scouting reports I read on Drew Romo were good defender, can't hit. And I thought, well, okay, that's a limited ceiling. I'm not going to look too much deeper into that. Turned out good defender meant potentially generational defender, and those two things are very different.
Yeah.
And the Rocky, the more I read into this, so here, the perfect game are the people who do this, I think, the best. They measure all the amateurs in the country, and they said of this kid, he is the best defender at any position, of any age, anywhere in the country. And that, I was like, oh.
Well, that seems relevant, pertinent information.
Right. So I don't care that he hit 250 in high school. We'll figure that part out. He's a switch hitter. He's a really smart kid. We sat in with the press conference, talked to him a little bit yesterday, both Patrick and I. Like, he's got it together. He knows what he's doing. If the Rockies make the right offer, that's still another thing that happens here. They still have to sign these guys and offer the right amount of money.
Because these guys what's their alternative route? Going to school, right? I mean,
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, high school guys. And in fact,
baseball draft is so weird.
It's so isn't it? Drew Romo has been, since he was a freshman in high school, committed to LSU. And he has worked with their coaches and some of the people out there, and it's, I think, unlikely he's going to end up going to LSU. I think he's going to sign with the Rockies, and I think they're going to pay him a little bit more money than he was expecting to do so to lure him away from these coaches that he was, really getting to know and wanting to work with. It's one of those weird things about baseball.
Well, with that, let's talk about each league's draft, because it is very different. Baseball is very weird, and they all have similarities, but also they're different. But I'm going to have Andre start, since Andre has a draft podcast, knows pretty much about every sport ever possible. So Andre, Mark, one of our members, came up with this idea for us to discuss on TDSP, so I do want to give him the credit for that. But could you describe the NFL's draft, some of its pros, some of its cons? Don't go in too much of detail, but just explain it to maybe a basketball fan wouldn't understand what the NFL draft is like.
Yeah, I think the key to the NFL draft and what makes it so appealing to kind of the casual fan, and it's why often it'll get better ratings than like an NHL playoff game or an NBA playoff game that's going on at that same time in the year, is that the guys that are being drafted are guys that we've been watching on national TV every Saturday for the past couple years. In some cases, guys like Adrian Peterson, like, he was a freshman, he was a Heisman finalist. We knew about him for like ages. And big time college football fans knew about him because he was a big-time recruit, and they were excited about that even prior to him playing college football. So they're really household names, and it marries so perfectly to the NFL and fantasy football and all of that hype that's already built around. And, that's why it's become this big media event. Now it's divided up in 3 different days, the first 2 days being in prime time. And it's 7 rounds, which is as many as any sport aside from baseball. That's insane. But obviously, baseball is the exception this year with just 5 rounds. Usually, though, baseball's king there with the amount of rounds. But no, 7-round draft. And
40.
yeah, that's kind of the thing, though. 40.
I'm so
what are we doing?
jealous of watching the NFL draft people do their film room stuff, because you just go to YouTube and you type in a dude's name and there he is.
Yep.
And I'm
Right.
over here.
Did that for our DNVR Draft Day live show
Yeah.
for the
Rudo's
NFL. He
got
was
a
just like, Jerry Judy.
I'm over here going to
50
like
options.
benchhockey.tv and all
Sounding
these
out some of your
super
Eastern
sketchy
European
websites,
yeah.
like trying to find some dude who's playing out of Germany that no one's ever heard of.
Rudo's out here on the dark web looking up minors, That's how he's got to find film for hockey.
Oh, great.
Just handheld phone cam, someone yelling, shoot!
Man, you're not that far off.
That's right.
Jay, what, generally speaking, how late into the NFL draft can a team, can a fan base expect to find, I'd call them a difference maker, a needle mover, someone who's on the field changing the way things look the next season, 3, 4?
I mean, maybe the 4th round.
Yeah, 3-4 is the range where you can find a real contributor, someone who could be competing for a award.
Oh,
Frozen.
Competing for the best internet
competing
And
for
have
a
high-end production.
Oh, he's back.
connection. Sort of.
This
Kind
is a
of.
good question, too.
Still
Back.
frozen for me.
Yeah.
Dre?
Good.
He's trying. There he is.
Hi. I can see and
move
hear all of
around a little
you.
bit.
Yeah, you're
Still
back. I think
doing
you're
better
back.
than our Ryan McMahon interview. So.
Oh, that's
good.
That's true.
Aw.
Oh, Dre,
That's a
real
high
quick,
bar to clear.
what is a con of the draft? What is something looking at all the other drafts that you think the NFL could improve on?
What's incredible is the NFL has kind of got themselves into this self-fulfilling prophecy of it should be the easiest draft. You're drafting guys who are at least 21, 22 ready-made products in a lot of ways, have been tested at a very high level, and yet teams can get so enamored with combine numbers, so enamored with just measurables and all this kind of stuff, or put players in awkward fits that aren't going to benefit them, and you really end up seeing a ton of misses in the NFL draft that are almost inexplainable when you have all these other factors that should really reduce that risk, and yet we see a ton of misses every year in the league. So that's really the drawback, is we get too cute for our own good.
One thing before we move on to basketball, which the NBA has a lottery, Dre, do you think that the NFL installing a lottery would help at all? I mean, you got teams like Miami who's like tank for Tua and all these things. Do you think it would make it too cute for its own good, or do you think it would really help the situation?
It would be kind of fun, but the NFL really doesn't need it because they don't need that competitive balance, because teams like the Miami Dolphins this year, it seems like they're taking their roster apart, but instead they're still able to win games.
NFL
and they were
teams
the fifth
can't
pick.
even tank right. Like
Exactly. They can't tank right. That's exactly right. It's too competitive. Every single game means too much to where you don't need that built in.
All right, well, let's move on to basketball, the NBA vote. How would you describe the NBA's draft process?
Fanatic. I did people there's a divide between, I don't know if this is the case in your respective sports, gentlemen, but draft Twitter and NBA Twitter. As someone who covers the NBA, I truly don't have the mental capacity to pay that much attention to the draft while the season's happening. There are so many names, so many players. So there are people who are all in on that, who are like more into the drafting process itself than how these guys are playing in college or NBA. And then there are some people like me who have a lot of cramming to do as the season ends. But it's a really exciting time. 2 rounds, 60 players, and you just do the math in basketball, 5 players on a court. Your odds of a very good player moving the needle, affecting the odds. I mean, that's just the way it works. So you could a team can draft one player, and you can say to yourself as a fan base, maybe not next season, but 2-3 years from now, this whole thing's different. The whole outlook's different. And so it's just the math of it that makes it so enthralling. And then if you're a Nuggets fan, what just happened recently is really ultra rare. Of course, these top players are going to bad teams that are 2-3 years away from contending anyway. But every now and then, something happens where a guy like MPJ slides to a team like the Nuggets, who are one piece away from winning a title, but don't always sign. They never sign those types of players in free agency. Well, maybe they just drafted one. And so it's just the hope that one individual can represent, I think, it is what's so appealing about it.
Let's hope that he actually plays more when the season comes back.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, it's wild. Like, it's the Nuggets have done almost everything right. They put themselves in. The rebuild is underrated when talked about across the league. The Brian Shaw era was horrendous. Where they are now, it's incredible. They made almost every right decision. But at the end of the day, are they going to win a title or not? That might come down to this kid having slid to them at 14.
Yeah.
The 2003 NBA draft dramatically shifted the power landscape of the entire league in an instant. Of like 6 franchises just became with LeBron, Carmelo, Wade, even Bosch going. Some of the guys like that. Like all of a sudden, Toronto's relevant. Like
for sure.
It was insane. The Nuggets went from being one of the worst teams in the league to being a playoff team. Cleveland got the best basketball player of at least a generation,
and
maybe
it all
ever.
Changes overnight like that, and that's sort of why
on one night.
And in a weird way, I know some people have issues with the structure insofar as it incentivizes tanking or whatever, but there's just also these appealing threads to pull on as a fan. Like, okay, my team has no chance in hell.
Everything.
My team has no chance in hell of winning a title, but there's all this intrigue and hope and excitement on draft night for us still, right? So some of the same things people don't like about it, I actually love about it, because it's very hard to feel completely hopeless in this league. Because all right, maybe we get that number 1 overall pick and things change.
I think also it's not as much as football, but some of these players are very well-known names.
Definitely.
Like Zion. I mean, everyone knew who he was.
Definitely.
They just have a year in college, but they still have some sort of time when they are so big like Zion. Or even MPJ, a lot of people knew him. Or even Bull at Oregon. Like, people knew who he was, and so it gives that feel a little bit on, oh, I know this guy. Oh, I can root for this guy. Oh, this is cool. I want to watch Zion go number 1 overall. Similar to football, while you don't really have that as much with baseball and hockey, with it being just
you guys weren't tuned into Woodlands High School baseball games?
The diehards know, right? Correct. But then with basketball, 1 million people, I think, followed Zion on Instagram before college.
Right.
You know, so this is not just the diehards. So.
Yeah.
Is there any cons? I mean, you mentioned a few of what the fans think, but what do you think? You covering the draft, is there anything that you would want to change or want to take from any of the other drafts?
I mean, there's definitely a lot of conversation to be had about potentially changing the way being bad is incentivized. I'm not really sure how I feel about it, because like I spoke earlier, I do think there's another side to this sword insofar as it keeps the hype train rolling, but I do think plenty of people would change that if they could. There's also an interesting dynamic in the NBA draft that, I don't know if this is a con, it's just something I noticed teams kind of getting wrong. When you get out of that like 1 through 5, 1 through 10 range, and your chances of finding that guy that changes everything for you overnight really drops off, you still find teams taking swings at these like really high upside guys. Really, really talented athletes out of a big school or a big program. When there's a small army of Monte Morrises out there, right, who is never going to be the best player on a team. But if you follow Monte's career at all, 4-year Cyclone at Iowa State, set records for them, set an NCAA record for assist-to-turnover ratio. well, no shit, he's a good pro, right? I mean, who couldn't have seen that coming, that he's a great backup? And so I would like to see a shift, and maybe some teams like, all right, the MPJs are off the boards. Why not try to find those elite role players? And sometimes that even is like getting a Draymond in the second round, which is massive. So sometimes there's so much obsession with that star power that teams take those swings and they miss.
I agree. I think with MPJ, there so many people talked about him being so young, him needing to mature, and you see a lot of that with these younger guys. But if you get a guy who is 21, 22, has gone through college ball and taken that time to mature, then he's a guy that will play a role on the team. Yep. It's not necessarily a starting guy, but Monte brings a lot to the table.
And that was his first year as a pro, right? He had the G League sort of intermediate year, and then he's a pro. It took 48 hours for Monte to make it known that he was going to help this team win games. So you're balancing this against, like, when you're a GM, okay, you want to do this proper team building thing, but when it's 5-on-5, if you get that one guy, that matters most. So it's difficult, but I do think some teams kind of miss out in the middle rounds for that reason.
Rudo, let's move on to you.
It's the old Zach Veen over a reliable college pitcher
Exactly.
debate. It's the same thing. Yeah.
Rudo, how would you describe the NHL draft? Don't go too long. I know there's a lot of layers.
I would make a case that the NHL draft is the most unique of the four. First of all, it is the only one whose main source of prospect is not United States academia.
Yeah.
True.
Yes.
As the majority of their players do come out of major junior leagues and other Canadian leagues. And they can draft European players, unlike baseball and their weird international stuff that goes on. But
just got a whole other draft for that.
Oh my god!
Kinda.
Yeah,
how many drafts do I get to talk about? Rule 5? Sorry. Continue,
we did an explainer of Rule 5, didn't we?
We did. Yeah.
So
go check that out.
So there's that, but they do have a lottery as well, which, in my opinion, has gone a little bit too far now that they're lotterying away the top three, kind of like the NBA does. But nonetheless, they're not a league that, unless you're picking in that lottery, you're not likely getting a player that affects your team immediately. Yeah. So you have to draft for the future. And I really like their setup for doing that because they have a rights draft. It's not like baseball where you draft a guy and you have to immediately sign them or they can cycle back in. If you draft a player who's going to college, you hold their rights until they graduate from college, and then you can sign them once they're done. So I think that is extremely well thought out and a good way to have a draft in that you're not forcing a player to commit to something over something else. Beyond that, the NHL draft is always going to be a weird one because they draft at 18 like baseball. Yeah. But it's a little bit faster paced than baseball. With baseball, we're talking about Zach Veen in like 5 years. Right.
Yeah.
Whereas in the NHL, it's usually more like 2 or 3 years before you're starting to see these guys. So,
Rudo, how rare is the Cale Makar thing? Like that kind of an impact right away? Is that is that in the top 5 of the draft usually, or is he a exceptional case?
He's exceptional. He's very, very special. You will get NHLers out of the top 5 that can be NHLers right away, but we're talking about Cale Makar as he's played 50 NHL games, and we're saying this is a surefire Hall of Famer if he stays healthy. And so that's when we talk about generational talents. It's a word that they throw around in the NHL draft all the time. Gets way overused.
Sure.
Cale Makar is one for real. And that is the entire point of the NHL draft. That is why we've seen teams like Edmonton and Buffalo tank for years to get that guy.
Right.
The whole draft is hyped around these type of players, and obviously not nearly as big here in the U.S., but in Canada, people know these kids' names from like 13 years old sometimes. So that's where it gets interesting, I think, is at the top 5, top 10, you get really special stuff. And if you're an insane person like me, you know names up until like the 3rd or 4th round, and then the other rounds you're just taking shots at the dark. Like, let's be honest.
The NHL is interesting though, in my opinion, because the Avs fan base knows a lot about just some of the guys that the Avs have drafted. While maybe with baseball, some of the names kind of like fly away, but you have a guy like Alex Newhook, Bowen Byram. Like, people were so excited. To me, like, some of those drafts felt like the NFL, where people were so hyped, like screaming, like, yes, we got Bowen and like all this stuff. But then it takes time for them to come and play, and so I feel like, do you think that hype kind of dies down because of those years to play?
It can go either way. I think, it's a good medium. With baseball, you don't hear about the guys because you draft Zach Veen and he goes and plays rookie A, and then next year he's playing single A or double A, and he's just so far away from the organization. With Byram, you're like, all right, realistically, in 1 year he's going to be on the team, so it's something to follow. And it can go either way. A lot of this season, people were not as hyped on Byram because he wasn't scoring at the ridiculous rate that he did last year.
We also didn't see him play very much during the preseason.
Correct. They did not play him a ton during the preseason. They tried to give him an opportunity to make the team. He needed another year. It is what it is. But just that proximity is where you'll see the hype drastically swing with NHL players, because everyone's only 1-2 years away from being pro, especially now with the Avs having their AAA team, the Colorado Eagles, and the AHL just up the road, so everyone can go see those guys. When someone like Eustace Annunen, European goaltender who nobody knew anything about, set the record in his league for most shutout minutes in a row, all of a sudden there's a ton of hype on that guy coming over. And the other side of this is the rates in the draft. Because they don't have to sign anyone right away, when they do go out and sign someone like an Annunen, it's that little blip of hype, right? It's like, oh, they signed him. That means he's coming soon. Now we need to go look into this guy.
Right.
I think the Cale Makar, we had someone in the comments say Cale also took the long route of 2 years after the draft before playing in the NHL. Longer route for a top 5 pick. I mean, Cale's journey and the way that he came in, just like after almost winning a championship in college, to then that same week scoring his first NHL goal in a playoff game, like that hype just made him who he is. Like, everyone was like, I like that guy. I want his jersey. He's it.
If we're taking the hype train off the rails here, every single league Cale Makar has ever played in his career, his second year has been significantly better than his first.
Are you kidding me?
Let's go.
So, point per game Cale Makar might be just around the corner. That's all I'm saying.
He's a generational. He's one of those dudes. You see, he moves differently than the other people.
Yeah. Absolutely a special player, no doubt about it.
Do you have any did you talked a bit on some of the cons, but anything that you would change or take from the other drafts, the other 3 drafts?
So the biggest problem, and I understand that I'm getting a little bit into the minutia here. What I love about the MLB draft is you can take a kid right out of high school and put him in pro ball. With the major junior Canadian league, if you draft a player out of there, he either has to play NHL or he has to play juniors. He cannot play in a minor league in North America. And it's a pretty rare case. There's usually only a couple of guys that applies to every year, but you're stunting their development. They could develop a lot faster if you let them turn pro.
Well, I mean, people would argue that. I mean, that with college, for football as well. Just some guys just going straight after a year or 2 of college to the NFL and not risk injury. We saw that with Laviska Shenault. He could have been drafted as a sophomore, and then he got hurt, and there was so many injuries and so much came into play that he fell in the draft pretty late because of I think he would have been drafted way earlier if he would have gone in that sophomore year.
Worth noting, I don't know how many structural changes there will be, but this whole process for the NBA could change a lot. We know there's this G League select team now that's being put together featuring some top high school recruits that opted for that route instead of college. I'm honestly just thinking about this now. I don't know, would they declare for the draft after G League time? I have to like go back and
I hope
research
they
this.
do. I think something like a G League select team, I think, is a fantastic idea.
But that could change. That could change the way the NBA is doing this going forward as well. So
well, they could do away with the one and done. That could make kind of the G League select team null, and that was a weird time when we had high schoolers being drafted straight to the NBA. Let me tell you.
For sure. It really only worked for a couple, huh?
Yeah, picking the right guys was odd, and you had guys like Kobe dropping to 13 or Kevin Garnett dropping out of the top 5, and
some guys need college. Some guys need college. So.
It really helps with that maturity that we were talking about earlier. It helps them learn just a different system than just going straight from high school.
Well, if you're the best basketball player at a young age in your class, on your team, on your AAU team, there's a very high chance you're not building winning habits or learning basketball. Yeah. Your coach is asking you to put the ball through the net. And you're very good at that, but then you get to college and, okay, now these other guys are as athletic as you. Now you're learning defensive schemes. Now you're learning what the right read is on offense as opposed to just what the sick move is. And so a lot of players need that intermediate.
I mean, we even saw that in The Last Dance with Michael Jordan, just talking about how that first year he was like, oh, okay, I really got to work. And then after that first year, he really shined and became who he is.
And that was a guy who was ready for it, right?
Yeah,
that was a guy who didn't even really need to go to college. So most people are very far cry from Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. But then balancing that against, like, when you have a one-and-done thing, like, how silly would it have been to make LeBron go to school? Like, why did LeBron need to go to college?
Totally.
So,
right. Yeah.
All right, Drew, let's move on to you. Let's have you describe the MLB draft in terms that most people will understand.
Oh, okay. Well, typically, the MLB draft lasts 40 rounds, and roughly 12,000 players are selected.
Good Lord.
More than half of them will never sign with the teams that select them. It is not uncommon for players to be drafted 2 or 3 times. Charlie Blackmon was drafted a couple of times, originally as a pitcher.
Wow. I didn't know that at all.
It is crazy. It is absolutely insane the way that it works. There are so many little rules that govern why some teams might not take a player who's really the best on the board and might reach way back. It's a whole thing about saving money and paying guys slot value. It is ridiculous. Like almost everything else in baseball, it is unnecessarily meticulous and complex and rewarding to those who devote just an absurd amount of time to trying to understand it. Like Vogt was saying earlier with the NBA, there is a very sharp split between people mostly pay attention to Major League Baseball and even those who pay attention to professional prospects. And then there's a whole different group of people who do the amateur scouting and watch high school and college baseball. And there are so many moving pieces to it that it's difficult to sum up for anyone who's never seen or gone through an MLB draft before or followed a player's trajectory through the minors. And as we were kind of talking about earlier, you could be anywhere from John Gray, who went to 3 years of Oklahoma and basically sprinted through the minors from a Rockies perspective at a little under 2 years to make his major league debut, or Trevor Story, who was taken out of high school and took 6 years and had to repeat high A baseball after a terrible season in the minors. This guy ends up being now, an MVP caliber player. It's very difficult to parse, but it's a lot of fun to try to do so.
Do people, Drew, know, people knew MPJ was who he was when he was 14, 15. Mm-hmm. I think we've heard the Bryce Harper stories. Is that the case with baseball too, though? Is the top of the class easily identifiable early on?
Typically not. A couple of guys will stand out, but the Bryce Harper, the Nationals, back when they were the Nationals, because they were such an embarrassing franchise, they actually spelled the name of their team wrong on jerseys they played in. Can you imagine taking the field Nationals?
Oh my
Bruh.
God.
And they were so bad that they got 2 first-round 1-1 picks 2 years in a row and got 2 generational talents in Bryce Harper and Steven Strasburg.
Yep.
And then didn't win a World
And
Series
let me
until
just
they
say
were rid
that
of
fan
one of
base
them.
didn't even enjoy it. Like I grew up in Philly and lived in DC for a very long time, and my friends knew nothing about the Nationals or about Bryce Harper or Strasburg, and it's just like, come on.
Yeah.
So
I watched Bryce Harper hit baseballs with a metal bat in Grand Junction at JUCO. Like, I probably saw him hit a ball over 500 feet. They didn't really measure
Yeah,
it.
they
there,
should
but
never have did that.
It landed on the highway.
legitimately dangerous. But then you've got the flip side of it where, I had sort of mentioned the 2013 draft before with John Gray going at number 3 overall. Just in front of him at number 2 overall, Chicago Cubs took Chris Bryant, great player. Hard to argue with that. Everybody knew Chris Bryant. Bryant was one of those guys, but the guy in front of him was the consensus 1-1 pick in the country. Mark Appel, a starting pitcher who retired before he ever made it to the majors for the Houston Astros, who were considered to be one of the smartest or just maybe one of the cheatest. They didn't get a pick in this year's draft. I can't remember why.
Yeah, that weirds me out because the MLB draft pitchers are like the anti-goalie when it comes to the draft because everyone takes them, they take them off, then they take them early, and it's still you just have no idea with some of these guys. They're almost like 60-70% of them go through Tommy Johns at some point.
Yeah.
Oh
Right.
yeah.
R.I.P. Alex
But
Reyes' career.
now there's a preventative Tommy
so
John
good.
surgery, right?
Yeah, well, one of the things,
That's
it's crazy
weird in
now.
itself.
I'm looking over these reports, and it's actually a good sign if you see a guy has already had TJ. You're like,
They
oh,
say
okay,
just
cool,
get
good.
it out of the way early now, right?
Yep.
So-
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is so crazy.
awful.
Thinking back
So you
to
wanna be a
baseball a
pitcher.
few years ago.
It
Just
is
dragging your
insane.
arm around the
Oh.
last 30 years of your life.
Oh, jeez. The thing I love though about the baseball draft is I guarantee everyone on this pod, well, maybe not Andre because he didn't grow up in the U.S., but the rest of us, I guarantee you, went to school with an MLB drafted player. They might not even know it.
Yeah.
That's true. But as
Right.
we talk about that, Drew, a lot of people might not understand the impact that only having 5 rounds of the draft this year
Yeah.
is going to have on the rest of baseball.
Right. So it's and not even just on the rest of baseball, on teams like the Rockies in particular. There are so many ways in which the economics of baseball are set up for the rich to get richer, and the draft is absolutely one of those. And it's super frustrating. And yeah, this is just another way, like having fewer. So, for example, Colorado Rockies, Sam Hilliard taken in the 15th round of the draft. Scott Oberg, their best reliever, taken in the 15th round of the draft. Dom Nunez, their likely catcher of the future, in the very near future, not Drew Romo of the future, taken in the 6th round of the draft, which no longer exists. Even things like now, while there would still be enough time, taking a look at, you're talking about a draft where Nolan Arenado was selected 56th overall. Everyone in baseball had their chance, and most teams in baseball had 2 chances to select this guy. And he was still on the board, and now he's one of the best who's ever played his position, arguably the best. And it's just weird that you're not going to find that with the 56th pick in any other draft, probably. The most famous examples are guys like Mike Piazza and Albert Pujols, who were taken.
Piazza's one is insane.
Mike Piazza was taken, I think, in the 30-somethingth
I'll tell you,
round.
as a Cardinals fan, in spring training you started hearing the Pujols noise. But when Pujols was drafted, it wasn't a circle your notebook moment or anything like that. You know?
It's just amazing that can happen, and it does disproportionately impact the low market teams and I'm going to jump the gun and start to answer the question, but that you're going to ask me about what to change. But because one of the things is you can't trade draft picks, and there's all the stuff that I was talking about earlier with the slot money. So a team like the Rockies can't load up on draft picks for extra opportunities to pick up these guys who are going to be a little bit cheaper. Maybe take a because they may be not able to sign them, or because literally you can't trade for them, or all of these other reasons. And there's this slot money. So like the Dodgers, who pick at 29 because they were in the World Series last year, like. Well, they weren't in the World Series last year, the year before, but they've got the 29th pick. Like, okay, great, but the guy you're going to get at 29 isn't that much worse than the guy you're going to get at 18. In fact, there's a really good chance he'll be
Mike
better.
Trout went 25th.
Mike Trout went 25th in the draft, and so giving the teams that have performed better just lower round picks, I don't think is as good enough of a disincentive. If you can't trade, if you can't move around, if you can't move your slot money around, these lower market teams just get messed up, especially now because the 5 rounds was special for COVID situation a little bit, but it's also the owners putting their foot down and trying. They're going to try to make the draft as few rounds as possible, and they're going to try to make the minor leagues as few teams as possible, all to save money, despite the fact that they are in the middle of their second decade of record profits year over year over year.
Yeah, no one's losing money. Cry me a river.
All right, well, this conversation has been so well, I haven't wanted to stop for an ad break, and we've gone 45 minutes. So
let's sell some stuff.
Before we keep going, golf is back, and we have a full weekend of golf ahead of us. And even though the trophy is reserved for the winner, of course, the big cash winnings don't have to be. And to add to that excitement, DraftKings Sportsbook is putting you in the center of the action with a sign-up bonus up to $1,000. Dre, give us one bet you're taking this weekend on golf. Just one.
Well, the best prop of all early on was the 2 Eagles. Rory McIlroy and Brooks Koepka just need to get an eagle each, and you're winning.
It was like plus 2,000.
You're winning boatloads. Yeah. If you were able to get in on that, though, you also have a guy who I'm really liking so far. Is doing just incredibly well.
Like, I got
it's
you.
Harold Varner. Go on Harold Varner here. Yeah.
Okay.
Take the money line on Harold Varner.
And boosted odds on the Colorado Avalanche to win the NHL title.
1,500, maybe.
Anyways, well, I guess Vogt, you're fine. But I wanted to ask for one because I wanted to tease. If you want to listen to more of Dre's picks, you gotta go listen to DNVR Bets Daily, where he'll give you the exclusive with RK's picks. Andre and RK break it all down for you, so they tell you exactly what you should bet on. And they've done pretty well as the producer of the show. Their records are pretty solid.
They've done well.
Pretty well.
I don't know. I haven't seen them bust out the sunglasses too much recently.
Yesterday.
We were rocking shades yesterday, and I'll have you. I just remind you all that I'm above 500 betting on stuff like UFC, KBO, Faroe Islands soccer, and Bundesliga. So I'd like to see you guys. I think I'm doing quite well. Thank you very much. Tune in every day.
I just want to know. I have to take the boosted odds on the Avs to win, right?
Yes.
I know.
Yeah. At 1,500, their odds used to be about 1,000 when things started. They're down to 700 without the odds boost now. So it's you're doubling your money, and the Avs are top 3 in the league to win. You got to do it.
Yeah, you got to do it.
Bet on
It's a
the
no-brainer. No.
The real trick should be you sign up, get a sign-up bonus, then put that sign-up bonus towards the Avs using that bonus.
He's freezing because the internet gods are
the math magician over here.
All right, he keeps that name whenever he goes on
magician.
any show. Download as Andre was already mentioning, be sure to download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the code DNVR when you sign up. For a limited time, all new users can get a sign-up bonus up to $1,000. DraftKings Sportsbook is going all out with the sign-up bonus up to $1,000. Just enter the code DNVR when you sign up. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook, of course, must be 21 or older. Colorado only. Bonus comprised of a first deposit bonus and a first bet match, each up to $500. Deposit bonus requires 25x playthrough. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Be sure to call 1-800-522-4700. All right. We've buried the lead because the main point of this podcast was to ask you guys the question of which draft do you guys think is the most difficult overall? We are 50 minutes in, so that really shows all of the people listening and watching that these drafts have
Difficult.
a lot to them.
So difficult, like if I'm the GM, like it's difficult to succeed.
I
I
don't
would
know.
say so, yeah.
Yeah, difficult overall is the question that was asked. I think this is a hard question because I think you could go in two different directions. I think football could be the hardest because, like, maybe that's a bias, but I think football can be the hardest because if you don't hit on a first round pick, then that's really bad. I mean, look at my Eagles. The franchise freaks out, or the fans freak out. At the
Well, your
franchise.
fans freak out when Santa Claus shows up.
Well,
So.
how are the Giants doing, Vogt?
Boo. Boo Santa.
Yeah, I don't have anyone. I don't have anything for that.
Anyways, if you like,
Everyone
think of
calm down.
oh, the dad. He's Professor Dre, but he's also Dad Dre. Yeah.
Papa Dre.
Papa Dre, I like that better. No, but like, look at Paxton Lynch. Like, if you make moves, if John Elway makes moves to get a guy like Paxton Lynch and he doesn't work out like he did, then the fans are upset. Like, they are not happy. So I feel like that's why I think football could be the hardest. But I also think baseball and hockey, you're really gambling on like an 18-year-old or a 17-year-old. Or even sometimes younger, you're gambling on how they're going to be in 5 years, like how they're going to play. And so I don't know. I'm stuck. I think you could go in those two directions, and I really don't know. Rudo, you're about to talk.
Yeah,
so
between football and baseball. Football, just
Really?
because you have to have immediate impacts from.
Yeah.
Honestly, for it to be a good draft from multiple players in
Yeah.
every draft, you need to have immediate impact from.
It's true. Look at the 2017 Broncos. Like, people were freaking out, and one of those guys is still on the team. And I just threw my cord. That's how passionate I'm getting. People wanted John Elway to be fired at that
So,
point.
from evaluating a talent perspective, baseball, I have no idea how you're supposed to do it.
Yeah.
But I am curious, Drew, to what extent reputations are staked in and on the line. In basketball, you lose your job if you blow this.
Right.
And I don't know. So I'm just asking. I don't know.
No, that's the right question. Yeah, because it's not like no GM is ever going to be fired the day after a draft or the year after a draft.
Yeah.
Because of the draft.
Right.
Those guys that was how do you even know?
Like 5 years before you're even really held
Exactly,
to
but
the-
that's hard in itself to draft a guy that you have no clue if
Well,
they're
strong
going to turn
agree
out
there.
or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With baseball, I just think, what if you go 40 rounds and don't get a single MLB player in 40 rounds?
Right. Well, and there is it does. It can get combined too when Dan O'Dowd definitely got in real hot water for his drafts after a few years when they were looking back at Greg Reynolds and Casey Weathers getting taken in front of guys like Evan Longoria and Tim Lincecum and stuff, and then when the Rockies weren't doing well and it was supposed to be they had drafted all these guys and the guys they drafted just totally flopped and so and particularly for teams like the Rockies, it's more important because they've built their reputation on draft and develop and they have to build that way. But it's just there is a built-in excuse that people like me are always going to go out there and say, look, if their second round pick doesn't work out, that's not that uncommon.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you just talked about the first overall pick retiring before even going to the majors.
Right. And you can't have too many of those. And at some point, people will start to notice, man, this GM has blown a lot of drafts, or there's just no talent coming through the pipeline. It's definitely something people will know. But usually when you're evaluating a Major League Baseball GM, it's free agent signings, trades. Did he get into a massive offseason fight with his superstar player? All of that stuff comes before. How well did he do in the draft?
You can spend your whole career being the guy that took Ayton instead of Luka. And by the way, Ayton's a great player, right?
Yeah.
But this is still going to hang over
So-
you like a cloud.
AJ's mad at me in the chat
AJ's real mad.
for not defending the NHL draft. So
AJ
I'll-
took it the opposite of me. He said MLB is the hardest, NFL is the easiest. I guess
What
not
I will
opposite.
say
I
I think
said
that
MLB
is-
is kind of.
So what makes the NFL the easiest? 90+% of the prospects are all coming from college in North
Mhm.
America, right? With hockey, I think probably hockey the most. You get this in baseball to some extent and in basketball as well. But hockey is completely global, right? You need scouts everywhere in the US, everywhere in Canada, Northern Europe, Central Europe. You have scouts watching Russian teenagers playing junior hockey in trash cans out in Siberia, okay?
Right.
That part of it is incredibly difficult for sure.
Yep.
With basketball, I'm sure it's the same way watching leagues in China and things like that. So from that side of things.
Remember a thing that happened last night? Of course you do, because you guys were directing and producing the show. The Colorado Rockies selected a kid out of Douglas County High School.
Yeah, you didn't know who he was.
I
literally told you, Drew. He's from Colorado. Nothing.
Allie's trying to tell me. Rudo's trying to tell me. I'm trying to look it up. So I've got 3 different avenues of trying to find out who this person is. And he wasn't on Baseball America's top 500, and he was taken with the 109th pick or whatever it was, and 110th. And it's just like, well, and then I've got all these people. Of course, now everybody in Colorado who listens to the DNVR Rockies podcast has played against this guy and knows him.
Yeah.
Their brother or their son or whatever. They're like, dude, he brings it, and they're sending me stuff. He's hitting 96. All the area scouts, nobody else was out there. Only Colorado was checking on this kid. They found a diamond in the rough, and I'm like, maybe none of us know anything. I don't know. But that's like to Rudo's point, I think, for the NHL and Major League Baseball. It's like, you got one guy at the field to see him do his thing that day, or out at the ice on the right day in some small corner of the world somewhere, and he comes back and says,
"This is my dude.
This is my dude."
So I think it's interesting because we just talked NFL and NBA. If your GM doesn't draft the guy, then it's really big consequences for them, or it's just not good. Well, oh my God, I'm blanking. NHL, MLB, they are more of those going in depth, going to
Deeper
different
pools,
states, really trying to find that guy and seeing if it picks. So that's why I think this question it's split, because it can go either way. Sure. I think the MLB NHL draft having that is really hard. But then if you're a GM and you just got the wrong guy and you're gone the next day, or the next year, that's your legacy, not drafting whoever.
And that's part of the reason I knocked the NHL down a little bit. The Avs haven't developed a player past the first round in a decade, and they're a championship contender right now because they had a couple of good picks at the top of the first. So
the NBA, man, I hate to reduce. There's so much that goes into evaluating, and everyone has their own approaches, and these are individual decisions, right? That Pobos or GMs are making, but it's kind of a crapshoot, and it's so funny because then it defines the way we talk about them. I mean, Danny Ainge, widely considered a capable, wily, smart GM in Boston. He could have taken Giannis, as could have 12 other teams. I want to say it was the 13th pick, and he took Kelly Olynyk, right? So does Danny Ainge not know what he's doing, or is this thing really hard? The best thing Tim Connolly ever did for himself was take Nikola Jokic. You asked him off the record, on the record, he'll tell you both times. I was lucky. I thought he was good, but I didn't know he was this good. So the basketball stuff it's just how consequential it is. Yeah. But I also I think all these guys are taking shots in the dark, to be honest.
We've learned the draft is hard in general.
That'll blow your mind on the other side of that, though, with as much of a crapshoot as it is. The exact same California area scout for the Colorado Rockies scouted Nolan Arenado, Ryan McMahon, Peter Lambert, Garrett Hampson, and Dom Nunez.
Wow.
The same dude.
Did he also scout Tyler Matzik?
Picking that dude's picks earlier.
Trey?
Wasn't he a California talent?
I think he probably did, actually. I would suspect that he did. Tyler Matzik could have been great.
Okay.
You got mad at me for bringing that name up last time.
All right.
I know. That was retaliatory. I'm sorry.
This podcast is just really stacked. AJ just said the show is bad for my blood pressure. AJ,
name 3 things that aren't bad for your blood pressure.
You're literally always coming in feisty Friday. That's AJ's game. He comes in hot, wanting to fight us. If I told him to hop on, I bet you he would.
We could do a second hour right now.
We'll throw down again.
I know, right?
If you want to throw down.
No. We have a great show. We've already been stacked with a lot of great content, but we also have an interview with Curtis Blades that I got to get to. But first, Denver Rubber Company is the most reliable local partner for any long-term projects you have. They're your people. They've been around since 1972 and are the best at what they do. They've remained open during this crazy time and help supply products to other essential businesses. So be sure to call them today for any, and I mean any of your needs. Call them at 1-800-259-0010 or visit them at drcfirst.com/DNVR. Okay. Transitioning a bit, like I said, oh, there's a puppy.
This is for AJ. I wanted AJ to be able to relax a little bit. So. Also, the dog was sick of being outside.
Oh, yeah, I could tell. You were like, okay, I'll bring him in. Anyways, transitioning, Andre and I had a chance to sit down with our guy Curtis Blades this morning, who is getting ready for a big fight next week. If you don't follow the UFC, Curtis Blades is actually the number 3 ranked heavyweight fighter in the world.
It's true.
Pretty dope. And we get to sit down and talk to him. This one.
Yeah.
So we're going to play a bit of his interview right now. Rudo, cue it. We good?
Good.
Okay. How's it going, Blades? Thanks for coming on the Denver Sports Podcast.
No problem, man. I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Good. We're excited to learn more about your fight.
Yeah, Curtis, you've got this fight coming up. We talked about it last time you were on with us on the bets, where you nailed a bunch of picks, by the way.
You really did. All of our guys were like, we are only listening to Blades picks from now on.
That's right. Very excited to have you back on. But now finally we get to talk about a fight that you're in. Big fight, main card for the UFC Fight Night coming up on June 20th. That'll be in Las Vegas, and you're going against, seasoned vet Alexander Volkov. You're obviously the higher ranked guy. I was looking at the odds on DraftKings. You're coming in as a pretty heavy favorite. How have you been preparing for that, man?
It's been a pretty traditional camp. I've been doing my strength and conditioning, doing my pad work, doing my sparring rounds, my jiu-jitsu workouts, my wrestling workouts. So everything's pretty much been normal for me. I know the rest of the world's been a little bit out of whack, but my schedule's been pretty much the same.
So nothing has been different, even though you guys have to think of COVID now in the back of your mind?
Honestly, I don't even think about the corona. Because I've read the stats. I think I had it back in January before my junior fight. I lost about 15 pounds, like 2 weeks out. I couldn't sleep. I was hacking. I was sweating a lot. Couldn't eat, puking. Then it goes away, and I still won the fight. So, and I had abs. So I'm not that mad about it.
Yeah, you won that fight in convincing style too. You showed some of your added a little more to your game here. What can we expect in this Volkov fight? I mean, and you don't want to give away your game plan. Not that Volkov's necessarily.
My game plan. My game plan is always the same, universal. I want to pressure you. I want to wrestle you. I'm going to elbow you. It's always the same.
Beautiful. Yeah, and he's going to struggle with that ground and pound. I see his only game plan as trying to keep you at bay with those kicks. But the problem here, Blades, is if I'm really good at kicking, but I'm going against someone like you, I'm terrified that you're going to catch my leg and take me to the ground. So how does he navigate that, man? And how do you take advantage of that?
Exactly how the junior fight was. I knew he was scared to put anything out there, because when you put any heavy strikes out there, you have to anchor down your back hip. When you anchor down that back leg, it makes you a stationary target. If you miss or if you hit me, but it doesn't scare me away, I want to get to your hips, and no one wants to be underneath me. So he's not going to be as aggressive as he normally might be. He's going to be going backwards. I'm going to be able to pressure him. And when you're getting pressured, you make bad decisions. You get a little antsy. You start tossing out things you wouldn't usually toss out because you're not used to being on your back foot the whole fight. He's going to be going backwards this whole fight.
Yeah, I can just see it already. He is the bigger fighter. I was interested, what do you usually enter fight week at, and how much do you set yourself up to cut?
I don't have to cut. Right now I weigh 259. I normally enter Monday at 259, 58, somewhere around there. And then I don't eat that much throughout the week just because I do have nerves. Nerves happen regardless. It happens every fight week. So my hunger kind of goes away, and I just don't eat as much. I lose a little bit of weight. I'll probably be on the scale at probably 255.
Oh, that's beautiful. So I mean, it's basically you're not even cutting anything. That's such a huge advantage.
I feel bad for heavyweights that have to cut weight.
Right. Yeah, totally.
Blades, so this podcast here, we talk about all Denver sports and kind of break down. Maybe the hockey fan doesn't know much about football, so we kind of break it down in those. Could you kind of explain what your week is like next week right before the fight for those who may not be watching MMA as much?
Well, usually my week is I get there on a Tuesday, we sign it. I mean, we check in, I get my bag of gear. My coaches usually get there the next day. So Tuesday, pretty much hang out, do whatever I want to do. Wednesday, my coaches get there. I do a couple interviews over the phone or Skype. We get a workout in, then we relax. Thursday, same thing. I do my media obligations, and then I relax. And then Friday, we get on the scale, we make weight, we eat, we work out, and then we pretty much the whole week is just mental prep. Because there's not a whole lot you can do in 5 days if you haven't already added it.
Right.
I'm not gonna add a new move that I don't already have in a week. So it's pretty much all mental. Like my coach likes to say the hay's in the barn already.
Yeah, I like that. And then probably pretty similar here with the COVID. Have they tested you prior? Do they just test you once you get to Vegas? How does that process been working?
I have had a couple of teammates who've already had fights during the pandemic, and they told me when you get there, they're going to test you once. They're going to do what they put the thing down your throat to do that.
Oh yeah.
You pass that, you get a red wristband, which means you're good. And then the rest of the week, they check your temperature every morning, and then I think again at nighttime, and if you're good, you keep your wristband, and that's pretty much all I know. And I know they really don't want us to be like out exploring or out like interacting with other people. So I'll probably be in the hotel, wherever that is. I don't even have my hotel info yet, but wherever the hotel is, that's probably where I'll just spend most of my time at.
Right.
Blades, all of the guys that you've been training with at Elevation have been dominating lately. What do you think it is about training there that has given you all such an advantage?
I think it's the Elevation. I've always said that. That's why I moved here. Originally I'm from Chicago. I lost my debut fight. I knew I had to change up things, and I was blessed. I was able to come here and make a great connection with the coaches down at Team Elevation, and I think that's the biggest X factor is my conditioning. If you can push the pace for the duration of the fight, if you can keep at an 8 for the first round, the second round, third round, and if you have a 5-round fight, the fourth and the fifth round, a lot of guys come out at a 10 and they drop to a 7, and they drop to a 5, and then they just keep dropping.
That makes sense. I think that's a lot of athletes come out to Colorado, especially runners, to just kind of practice and get used to the elevation.
Yeah, huge factor there. And I mean, it's just been showing all the Colorado guys have just been dominating, especially in these recent cards. Allie, should we move on to the upcoming fights this weekend? And
Yes, people are so excited to hear your picks for this weekend.
see ya.
Gotta add everyone back in. So you can listen to. So we cut that interview short because you can listen to the rest of it on DNVR Bets Daily. Dre went into more details with him about some props for this weekend and everything like that. So definitely go listen to that later on at 5 p.m. today. But what'd you guys think?
Yes.
No answers.
Good. No.
Are we all still here?
You know how
the teacher put on the movie and we all checked out.
Pull my head off the desk.
Oh, hi.
You know how we all wear Eric's gear and like it looks great because he's a great designer, but then you see it on someone like Curtis Blades and you're like, is that how it's supposed to look? Like,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Like, is there some like?
It's
Yeah.
It's
Also, he a
interesting
bad man.
how long it takes every sport to kind of figure out, oh, maybe we should train at elevation when, like, Colorado has had the Olympic Training Center
for
forever, and it's like, that might be a clue.
Right? It definitely makes sense. I mean, he lost his first fight and was like, I got to go out there.
I'm always curious about what a fighter's life is like in between fights, you know, especially that week leading in. But I'm also like, how much of your day is training? What is that balance of finding a little corner of like mental health and just living each day, right? It's just like, I don't know, man, that such a moment, a few hours that could really help to define your career, and you have to sort of think about, plan for that weeks, even months, you know, out at a time. It's just such a strange way to operate.
Yeah, when he was talking about the way his week looks like before a fight, I mean, it makes sense, but I was like, I thought it would be more being in the gym and kind of getting ready and warmed up based on all the sports we deal with. Like, that's what you're doing. You've got batting practice. You've got shoot around beforehand for both basketball and hockey. But for him, that week leading up is all mental and getting ready right before the day before, and then he gets into the gym. It's makes sense, but I wasn't expecting to hear that.
He basically said he doesn't cut any weight, right?
Yeah.
So he's not one of those guys that's walking around 20 to 30 pounds over fight weight that, you know, the week before is just a total
grind,
grueling battle. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, he said he felt very fortunate to not have to be cutting weight.
I mean, prepping
like that to the altitude, what an advantage, you know?
Yeah.
Comes into fight week, doesn't have to cut weight, and he's got the, you know, that nice lung capacity coming at altitude, and he's the best grappler of the top 5 guys in that heavyweight division. He's a bad dude. You do not want to go against Curtis Blades.
Right. The altitude thing is so real. Like in any, even down to our level, like I went home and I busted my mile record by like more than 60 seconds, and I was sick. It was an accident, you know? And I'd just been, this is a flex right there. I'd just been running at
I was going to say I can drink more when I go back to the East Coast, but you were talking still physical.
No, it's true though. Even a lowly athlete like me, like just running my mile, I took 60 seconds off, having spent a year running at altitude and then coming back down. If you're like a legitimate athlete and you're really getting after it above sea level at altitude, how could it not provide an advantage?
7
Allie
years.
was talking about high level athleticism with her drinking back home.
I was gonna say that totally.
Well, in Philly.
Oh,
it is a sport.
That's where champions are made. You know.
I came back from college and went home, and everyone's like, "Wow!" I mean, and I have friends who come visit me who come and drink a little bit here, and after a beer are like, "Whoa, what is going on? Those mountains look really nice. I feel loopy."
I've been training at altitude my whole life.
Yeah, I still use that excuse of being out of shape from back home 7 years later. I'm like, if I go on a run right now, I'm not used to the altitude. I don't think I'm gonna.
Yeah, that's good. That always works.
So true.
Usually I run a lot faster.
Yeah, exactly. But all right, that's all we've got for you guys this week. It was a longer show, but it was a really good one, filled with a lot of great content. I just got to give a quick shout out. Thank you to everyone who's left comments on last week's pod about the Premier League. I am watching it this weekend. Don't worry, and I will finally be making a decision. I did not realize that this would be such a big topic. I have people messaging or tweeting at me asking me if I've chosen a team.
Where are you leaning? Give us 3 teams.
I have 2 teams.
Oh, okay.
West Ham and Manchester City.
West Ham.
Ooh.
Easy.
I just don't want them to be whatever it's called, relegated.
Yeah.
I know, but listen, it's like you're in this Denver sports scene now, right? Like it means more when you really got to grind for it. If you just hop on the City bandwagon.
I know, but I can't have one team that like it's nice.
Yeah, that's actually, you know what?
I literally have
You deserve
teams
that.
Right.
He's a Cardinals fan over here. Pick a team that's gonna whatever, dude.
Literally, the Eagles just won their first championship ever. The Phillies like won one forever ago, 2009. The Flyers, the Sixers, them. Blah.
You're a Buffs fan.
All right, you can have some winning
I'm a
as
Buffs
a treat.
fan.
Allie.
I know, but I really am. I think I'm gonna go West Ham, but someone said if you watch them play, you're not gonna go West Ham. Which I played soccer my whole life. Like I said that on last pod. Like I do love beautiful soccer. Like I get the mechanics of it. So that's gonna play a role. I don't know. I really didn't realize it was gonna be this big of a topic.
You gotta set up, do it on IG. You gotta have hats like a football recruit did.
And choose it. I'm gonna disappoint so many
That's
people.
great
People who are listening to this, including AJ. Did we? Yeah. Let's see. Did he comment? No. I was gonna say he's really been pushing Chelsea.
Allie Monroy, is that where we're headed with this?
What?
The DNVR decision.
Yeah, with Allie Monroy.
Hopefully not.
Exactly.
That's a lot of pressure. I really am I'm gonna slowly pick a team, and maybe it's
Better
West
not
Ham,
take
so
it
I
out.
like.
Come on, let me wear an
Challenge.
oversized sport coat and some brown pants, and I'll just sit there and ask you benign questions.
All right. Well, the decision will happen next week. We will see. Thank you guys for all tuning in and listening to this podcast. I hope you have an amazing weekend. Don't forget to leave us your questions on the DNVR Lounge Discord or on this podcast post.
What is that?
Mario is saying goodbye,
Cursed
apparently.
image.
You know, it's DNVR After Dark, but just the weekend has started.
Can I plug something? We're playing Warzone tonight. We're going to stream some Warzone. If you want to watch, if you want to hop in, holler at us in the Discord. You can round out our quad if you'd like.
I thought we were going to the bar and drinking.
I think
You
both
guys
of
are
those
doing
things.
that.
Yeah, we're gonna watch them play Warzone from the bar. It's gonna be great.
And I'm going to
Oh.
play Warzone from the socially distant, acceptable space of my couch.
Okay, so good thing
God.
I good thing you told me that because I got to bring the equipment to plug into the TV so we could watch that.
It's best to do all this live on the air.
Yep, always. Glad we plugged it and got it down. Also, the DNVR bar is open all weekend from 4 p.m. to 2 a.m. So if you want to stop by, most of us will be there tonight. We trickle in here or there, so definitely tweet at us if you want anyone specific to meet with you at the bar. But yeah, what are the faces you're making, Dre? It's like, ooh.
I'm with you. You're like, ooh. You want to meet
Right.
someone at the bar? Ooh,
It's the weekend.
come on.
Have a great weekend, everyone. Goodbye. Thank you for watching.